Welcome back to the Real Resilience Podcast. I'm Joe.
I'm Tanya Hart.
And we are here to talk about all things beauty business, entrepreneurship, sobriety, motherhood, and so much more.
So much more unhinged realness.
Unhinged realness always.
Okay.
Today, hot topic.
Hot topic 1099 versus W2 employment and why it fucking pisses me off. Just as a preface, I'm probably going to swear a lot today in this episode.
Yeah.
It is a subject that I feel extremely passionate about, and I'll tell you why if you keep listening.
Yeah, lots of F-bombs coming our way.
So when Joe and I first started talking about doing the podcast together, this was one of the issues that her and I have gone back and forth with for a very long time, because in the beauty industry, there is a constant misclassification of employees, quote unquote. And what I feel like it does to our industry is it keeps the bar really low. It prevents people from growing and thriving, making a beautiful career out of everything that the industry has to offer, which, in my opinion, is the license to print money. Like, there's no cap on what you can do in the beauty industry.
Totally.
But it's run illegally a lot.
So much.
And for all of the young professional, beauty industry professionals, I don't want them to get into this industry and feel like they need to leave in a few years because of like this being a big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I forecast to be a pretty lengthy episode because there's just so many points within this topic to touch upon. But I think, for a start, like baseline, it is not discussed in school.
No. So actually what prompted me, like when I texted you the other day and I was like, this is the subject that I want to talk about, is I actually did a job fair a couple of days ago or last week at the beauty school. And it's always really interesting to me, like when I go in and I like present to the students, the future professionals or whatever, I come in and do a job fair. One of the things that I was asking every single person that came to my table is, hey, my unwarranted advice for anything that you're trying to do right now is to really truly understand how you get compensated. Do you know the difference between W2 and 1099? I will say that probably 5% of them knew. Only 5%. And the rest of them were like, oh, I don't know what that means. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, like you need to make an appointment. Even if you don't come work for me, like just come sit in my office so that way I can like show it to you, break it down or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing too. Like when you get any other job, basically, you're an employee and there's no gray area, and this industry is like riddled with gray area, which is why the unknown, especially like new hairstylist, new esthetician, whoever comes into this industry and they're like, surely the person hiring me knows what they're doing. The person bringing me on board knows what they're doing. The salon that I'm going to knows what they're doing. And it's legit. It's legit. So I don't have to worry because surely a business
must know what they're doing.
They must.
But they don't. And I'll tell you why they don't know what they're doing. And we all fall victim to this. So as much as like it fucking pisses me off, and I know that there are a lot of owners out there that know what they're doing.
Yeah, wrong. Know what they're doing wrong.
They know what they're doing wrong. I do also truly feel like some of us start out in business with like, a lot of passion, a lot of excitement and not a lot of know-how. So what we end up doing is we just end up mirroring broken systems, right?
Yes.
We're like, okay, well, this is how I was compensated in my last salon. So it must be legit, right? Or this is how, commission was split in that salon, or this is how XYZ was done in this salon. And it's like, well, you left that business for a reason. It failed you in some way, shape, or form. And here you are starting your own business. And then you're going to run into a lot of obstacles. And I will say that like when I first opened Oomph, I started with booth renters. We're now full W2 employment. And I'm so glad that I had a really good accountant on my side who told me that when I was ready to hire my first employee, that they needed to be W2. I had no idea what the difference was. I didn't really understand any of that, but thank God I had somebody like that in my pocket because it's important.
Yeah, one of the things that I always had to make sure that I budgeted for was my payroll. Like I had somebody who not only was my bookkeeper, but she also handled my payroll for me to make sure that everything was done by the book and legally. Um, Reflecting back, I know my first salon job, listen, again, I was like fresh out of school. I didn't really know any different. And I'm like, small business, they're going to pay, she's going to write me out a check. It's got the salon name on it. So that's legit. And in hindsight, I look back and I'm like, I didn't fill out any paperwork in the beginning. I was not paid even minimum
Jump
wage.
scare, jump scare.
Yeah, I was like not paid minimum wage. I was commission only, which like red flag, we'll get into that too. But when I left that job and then the next, tax cycle comes around and I reach out to her, hey, I need XYZ. She's like, oh, no, no, no. You are an independent contractor for me. And I'm like, well,
What
but
does that
but
mean?
what do you mean? Because you set my hours and you told me when I had to be there, and I had your pay structure, and I'm so confused. Totally blindsided. Totally blindsided.
Yeah.
And that happens all day, every day in so many salons.
So let's break it down and tell people like what the difference is between the main differences between W-2 and 1099. So the first thing that you need to understand is it is a tax classification, right? So if you are W-2, you work for an employer, you get a paycheck, a portion of your taxes are paid for by your employer, plus you get a set of benefits, right? So the employer has to pay unemployment insurance for you. There's usually health benefits, like whatever benefits like fall within, and then there's protections, right? So God forbid you lose your job, God forbid you go through a global crisis,
A pandemic.
a pandemic, and you need to, get help from the government, like being a W-2 employee, like all of those structures are put in place to like help you, right? Not to mention there's usually like paid time off, overtime. So that's not something that you get when you're 1099. And then 1099 is you're essentially hired for a job and you pay your own taxes. So how these things kind of relate to the beauty industry and like some of the things that you really should be looking for, we're going to touch on.
Yeah. Yeah, we are. So baseline, W-2, you are an employee. 1099, you are your own boss.
Yeah.
And that's really important to understand that you are your own boss.
Hey, there is no such thing as a 1099 employee. And we hear that a lot. Like, oh, I'm a 1099 employee. There's no such fucking thing.
There's no such thing. There's absolutely no such thing. So we're here to just like break that narrative and hopefully educate a little bit more. With being a W-2 employee, just some things that, you know, should be the normal is that you would have a set schedule. Your pay should be at minimum, whatever your state's hourly is, minimum wage. And if you're on a commission type platform, even with a commission based pay, you still need to be walking away at the end of the week with at least minimum wage in hourly payment. Oftentimes, with a commission structure, what you'll have is either your hourly or your commission rate, whatever is higher, with the goal obviously being that you would hit your commission goals, but that hourly is there as a safety net for, especially for newer professionals that are getting into it that don't really have a book yet. You need to be compensated for your time. That is a huge thing. And if you're not and you're an employee, take note, red flag behavior. Another thing when you're a W-2, you should be filling out paperwork upon employment, which again is something that I didn't do at my first salon job. And in hindsight, looking back, like I should have known better, but I assumed that salon owner knew what she was doing. And so I trusted the process, but you should be filling out paperwork. You should be providing a couple forms of government issued ID. Like these are all things that should happen when you're an employee, an employee.
If you get taken on as a 1099, right? So even if you end up in, say, let's say a salon, right? And they hire you on as commission only. You this is where the gray area comes in, and it's like so hard to break this down for people. So you get hired on as a 1099, you're commission only, or say like booth rent. Let's just go to the commission only model for a second. there's a lot of fucking gray area there. And it's really important for you to understand this, because if this salon or you were to ever get audited, you can both be susceptible to fines for the misclassification of what you do. So, Joe is a makeup artist. So she gets hired a lot to do weddings. So within the wedding, there's usually a contract. And if she's working with somebody else, there's a contract for them. Like, this is the compensation of what you're getting paid for this job. So when we see a commission only 1099 structure within a salon, there's usually no contract in place, right? It's usually like, hey, come work for me. I'm going to pay you 45% commission. I need you to work these hours. I need you to do this job. You need to be open to my criticism. I'm going to train you. You're going to use all of my products, XYZ. And I'm telling you right now that if the IRS ever came in to audit you, you would be fucked. And that salon owner would be fucked.
And that's also something that is such an unknown thing too, is that if you think about it at the back end, if you're 1099, quote unquote 1099, you're commission only, but they're controlling your schedule. One, they can't control your schedule if you're 1099 unless you have an agreed upon set specific date for a specific job
Contract.
which is contracted. The other thing to think about too is if you're 1099 and you're your own boss, you want to be able to write off things like the product that you're buying and the supplies that you need, typically overhead if you're like a booth renter. If your salon owner is providing all of that stuff for you, you have nothing to write off. And I've also heard of instances of the salon taking payment on behalf of a 1099, which
and then deducting fees.
And you can't do that. You just can't do that.
So I feel like, when I look at situations like this, I feel like the reasons why I'm so heavily invested in it is because, I started Oomph wanting to create a place where stylists could thrive, right? Like, as somebody who was married, financially dependent on my ex-husband, having worked in many other places that I had been in a commission model, I had been in booth rental models, team-based pay models, or whatever, and I had gone to that place in my career where I felt really stuck. Like, when I was ready to leave the industry, like, I was a booth renter. So like, I was an independent contractor. And then being able to open Oomph, hiring on W2 employees, offering all of the benefits that I offer, life insurance, health insurance, paid time off, like all of these protections for employment, seeing how my team members thrive. And then, eventually in our industry, we're taught that now you get to go be independent, right? And then I see a lot of people go and take this booth rental route, or I see students getting hired fresh out of school in a place that is commission only. In both of these instances, I see people give it a good year, maybe 2 years, and then they leave the industry altogether because they have failed, because they were not educated properly on what 1099 employment looked like.
And not that they failed, the system or lack thereof failed them.
The lack of education failed them, right? Yeah. And to me, it's like, again, this industry just has so many options, especially like in a female dominated industry, where like, I want people to come work for me and have their own financial independence. I want them to be successful. In my model, in a W2 model, there's often growth patterns, right? There's no cap on where you can go and what you can do and have all these beautiful benefits. In a 1099 model, you are limited by your own belief system, by the failures, the legalities of the whole situation. I often find that people go into this segment of like the industry, they don't raise their prices, they get stuck in these ways, they cut their hours, XYZ. Like, I love going to the school and asking them like, oh, how many of you guys here want to be a salon owner? Everybody raises their hand.
Everyone.
How many want to be a suite owner? Everybody raises their hand. And then I'm like, how many of you guys are good at budgeting your money?
Yeah.
One person. Yeah. One person raises their hand, because like, I'm telling you, like, We're beauty industry professionals. We love to look good and glam and spend money. And like, you cannot do that. Like, you have to understand your gross sales that come in. You have to understand what goes out. And I often, like, I have interviewed so many booth renters this past year alone, like looking to get back into a W-2 situation. And I asked them, I'm like, okay, show me your P&L, your profit and loss statement. They can't show it to me. And I'm like, okay, so how much did you spend on color last month? They don't know. And then they're like, well, I go to Salon Centric and then I like pick up XYZ and then like I, buy my color, but then I see this like brand new beautiful box of lotion and I buy that and I'm like, you're already like out of budget. Right.
Right.
So that's why I'm super passionate about this topic.
Yeah, and listen, I think your salon is such a beautiful, rare thing within this industry. There's not a lot of salons like oomph that are doing things right and that do things like offer benefits. I think that your staff is so lucky, and I hope they realize that. I think there's this narrative too that in order to be successful in this industry, you have to be a booth renter, you have to be a suite owner, and it's very, very, very glamorized online.
And then why is that? Is it because like people see this and they're like, oh, I'm gonna make so much money, I'm gonna have so much more time, like girl boss so hard.
Oh God. Can we not? I literally hate the term girl boss so fucking much. Like,
Oh,
you're
because
not
it was like
girl boss. It was like
it was coined back in like
trendy.
2014. It was
It
like
was
girl,
very trendy in the beginning, and then like I'm gonna say it. You can hate me for saying it. MLMs killed the girl boss narrative. But also, like, once you become a legitimate boss that is responsible for employing others, like, don't diminish what I do by calling me a girl boss. Like, again, the men aren't walking around calling themselves boy bosses because it sounds fucking ridiculous. So let's not call ourselves girl bosses.
I kind of just wanted to throw that out there just for your reaction.
Yeah, well, like, I'm like sweating now. Like, I'm hot about it. And like also like not for nothing, if you're not writing anyone a check and you're not actually a boss of anyone, then you're not a boss. Like I get like boss bitch, like I'm a boss, but like you're not a boss. Anyway. Anyway. Okay, back on topic. But I think that it is really glamorized. Like I know I've seen like reels and stuff like that where people are like, I made X amount behind the chair today. And it's like, all right, girl, but let's break that down. First of all, how long did it take for you to get to the point where your demand and your skill set was high enough that you're able to charge that? Because you don't just booth rent and then like day one, you're making $1,000 behind the chair. That's not real. Also, what is your overhead? How much is your product cost? How much are you paying in insurance? How much is your rent? How much are you paying for all your social media marketing? It's like, what at the end of the day are you actually bringing home?
So if you are an industry professional and you're thinking about going out on your own, so I did have somebody, one of my team members leave, and you just said that and it just like triggered me a little bit because she left, she opened her own suite. I'm really happy for her. I'm great that that is the route that she took. I'm glad that she's trying it, XYZ. On her first day, she messaged everybody on my team and she was like, oh my God, I did like $600 in sales today. Like, oh my God, I made $650 today. Do you know what the suite rent is? It's like $350 a week or something like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So that in itself is like high, like that rent. So like there was no like, show me what you're paying in taxes. Okay. So you did 600, let's say you did $650. So proud of you. That is actually a pretty good day behind the chair. All right. You have to pay your own taxes. You have to pay for all of your own supplies. You have to pay for your rent. And that is like the most simple of math. So show me what your gross sales are, $650 minus all of your expenses, and then show that to me. And then, yeah, how many hours did you work? How many shifts are you working this month? How many times on your time off did you have to contact clients, talk to them, like
Yeah.
all those things?
All those things. I know like leaving a commission model as an employee and then going to booth rent, your first year, you're like, oh my God, I'm making so much more money because you're seeing it up front. Okay. But
And then you go to pay your taxes.
then when you really do the math on it,
If you are paying your
if you're
taxes,
paying your
which
taxes,
I hope
because
you are.
also quarterly taxes should be paid or else you're going to pay out the ass at the end of the year. Mark my words. But what really, like, sit down and do your numbers. Like, are you making that much more working for yourself?
But I think that there's this thing that happens, Joe. And like, I know that when I was like booth renting, it was like, oh, well, like keep all of your, I'm just going to say it, keep all of your cash sales. There's a lot of like sweeping under the rug. And we have owners that are actually telling people in this industry to do that. I'll tell you what, I don't like paying taxes. I fucking hate
I hate the man. I hate
the system.
the man.
Taxation is theft. But you know what else is theft? Wage theft from owners that don't want to pay for your benefits. They're using you and manipulating you, using your labor, and then not compensating you correctly for it.
100%. 100%. I know of a salon, a rather big salon, that from the outside looks like the place to fucking be. They started out a really high commission rate for their employees. Everyone was an employee. And then about a year or so in realized, oh shit, this commission rate is way too high and we're losing money.
Yeah, good for them though for realizing that. Good for them for realizing that. Continue.
However, they then wanted to pivot to, we're going to have you all now be a 1099, but we still want you to maintain your hours. The price of service is still going to be the same. This is going to be your commission. And we will supply the product, but you're going to be 1099. So basically, what they're doing is avoiding paying payroll taxes, is what they're trying to do, because that's going to cut a huge cost for them. But they're disservicing every single stylist within that salon, because that stylist is basically paying taxes twice. They're not able to pay for any of the write-offs that they would normally be able to pay as a 1099, because all of those things were provided for them. But also at the commission split that they had, they were making even less than that at the end of the day, because they have to pay taxes on that percentage that they were given. So even at like, say, a 50-50 split, they're not really making a 50% commission, because they're not getting what would have been taken out in taxes as an employee that's already accumulated into whatever their rate is. But if you're a 50% just commission, as a 1099, you have to still pay your taxes as a 1099, and then you're going to get chopped with that rate. You're not really taking home 50% at the end of the day. And I will tell you, I know girls left because they knew and they saw what was happening. And I've had conversations with some of them where they're like, that whole salon experience ruined it for me, that I don't want a booth rent. I don't want a booth rent, but I'm so scared now to ever be an employee, because I feel like I can't trust salon owners and I can't trust the system, because I got screwed over.
And that's why I will also tell you that, like, when you're out and you're job shopping, please take the time to ask them to job shadow. Make sure that you sit there for a couple of hours, that you're able to talk to some of the people that work there to have a complete and comprehensive understanding of how that salon is run. Because oftentimes we have this like golden carrot that's dangled in front of us. It looks really, really good. And then we just take it. Like, it's crazy.
You should be able to have a very open conversation with any place that you are looking to go, whether it is a booth rental situation or an employment situation, and have a very honest conversation about what compensation looks like. And if the salon owner is not able to paint a clear picture for you, that's potentially a big red flag.
I guess the bottom line is this. If you are a 1099 independent contractor, on top of, like, say, your $1,000 in sales, you should be budgeting a minimum of 25% of that.
I was going to say 25 to 30%.
25 to 30% just for your taxes. So then you have your 25% plus the 10% for your back bar costs, plus whatever the commission split is or your rent. And then bam, that's how much money you've actually made.
Yeah.
And guess what? Like, if you go work for a commission only salon down the street where you're a 1099 employee, which is not a thing, again, they pay you 45% commission. The W2 salon offers you 40% commission. You don't make more money 45%, because if you are budgeting 25% to put away, you've actually only made 20%. And more often than not, you don't get to write off color costs or anything like that, which helps kind of get that like gross income lower. because the salon owner is taking all of those write-offs.
Exactly.
It's a whole thing, you guys, and it's happening so
Exactly.
much in our industry.
And, I hear stories too of like people that their first year kind of booth renting and they don't know that they're supposed to be paying into like quarterly taxes and things like that. Come tax season, they owe $9,000, $10,000. And it's like a lot of people are like, wait, what? Like, what do you mean I owe that much? That's crazy. It's like, well, that's part of being a business owner because as a 1099, you own your own business. The other thing to consider, and we kind of touched upon this, and I wanted to just like circle back for a second, is the idea of like, well, I'm just going to pocket my cash. And then in this industry, like, I'm not going to count my tips. I'm going to pocket the cash. And like, that's going to be like my grocery money or that's going to be whatever. Like, first of all, not legal, but it happens all the time in this industry. But the thing that you really need to, I think, keep in mind too is like your life building. And what I mean by that is like you want to go buy a car, you want to buy a house, you want to like make these big purchases. You need to prove your income. And if you're not counting that cash towards your overall of what you're making, you may qualify for less. You may not be able to get the things that you want because it looks like on paper, you're not making as much as you're really making. You're shooting yourself in the foot.
You told Uncle Sam you made 10 grand last year. Now you and your partner are trying to buy a house. Or guess what? You are a 27-year-old, financially independent young woman who doesn't have a romantic partner that's trying to make moves for herself. You want to buy a condo, you want to buy a Mercedes Benz, like, and you know that you are making the money.
Yeah, you have plenty of money
You have
for it.
plenty of money, you've got cash in the top drawer. Guess what? You can't use that cash for big purchases because you did not pay taxes on them. So when you go to do that, you're going to get flagged, you're going to get audited, it's going to be a problem. And you will never have the financial independence that you should have. We all have to play the fucking game in order to get to where we need to be sometimes, as frustrating as it is.
There, it's no one wants to do these things, but it's part of being an adult and it's part of being a business owner. And if you want to be a booth renter, then guess what, babe? You're a business owner and you got to do shit by the books.
Yeah. So this is the other like thing too I wanted to touch on, like going back to, being hired as like say a commission only like 1099 or whatever. Like make sure that you have a contract in place, right? If you are a booth renter, make sure that you have some kind of like lease agreement that like protects all of these things for you. And if you are 1099 too, this is going to be one of the big things that the IRS looks for is you have to file your own LLC. Whatever that looks like, you have to have your own business filing. You can't just say you work at X salon, but you are 1099. Like you have to show that you are your own business, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. So you want to think about that. Even if it's like a doing business as, you have to check your own state's regulations and what's required for your city, your state, what they need. But you need to be legitimate. Get insurances, make sure that you're covered. There's just so much that goes into it, and I think again, like it gets very, very glamorized without people realizing truly like it's quite a lot to be self-employed.
Right. So before you take that jump, make sure that you have a CPA. Like I'm not a CPA, Joe's not a CPA. I speak from a 20-year experience like in this industry and seeing like what's going on out there.
Yeah, and I just hearing horror stories from people that have, worked for me that have gone elsewhere, and hearing kind of just like, oh, like the sketchy situations. I have been subjected to it myself when I first started out in this industry because I didn't know any better. But now being on, I left that. I became independent, was working for myself for a long time, and then I got employees, then I got booth renters, and now full circle, I'm back to just being by myself. But I've also seen so many different sides of it, and knowledge is power when it comes to this sort of stuff. And I just wish that everyone was held to a higher standard so that the industry could all rise together.
On that. I'm with you on that. And I think like oftentimes people think that I don't support a 1099 or a booth rental situation because I'm a W2 salon owner, and that's not it at all.
No.
Like my passion is really in mentoring others and making sure that we all survive and succeed in this industry and have the longevity to do so. And but what ends up happening is that education isn't there. People take these jumps, they take these risks, and then they end up leaving the industry altogether. And like we see that cycle about every like 5 years. And it's like every team member that has ever left to like I actually haven't had that many team members go out to become booth renters. Like, sure, they've left to go work at other salons because their friends left and they wanted to go work there. They just happen to be booth rental salons. But not many have actually left to be like, oh, like I'm ready to be a booth renter or whatever. And I will say that of the people that have left, I've only seen like maybe three of them do it and do it really well. And, I hear these stories of like people that have left, they've gone to be independent. They went to go open their own salon. They didn't pay their taxes for like 3 years. Like they couldn't get assistance in even trying to open their own salon because they had, they owed the government like however much, like $35,000 or something like that. You guys, they're gonna find out somehow, some way, and just protect yourself. It looks beautiful. I know that you have your logo in mind, you have your paint picked out, you have the theme, whatever. And like you go work at this, like you see this beautiful salon that's hiring and it's like stunning in there, but the owner doesn't know what they're doing, whether they know that if they know what they're doing or not, like on purpose. It's just like not.
Yeah, and this isn't like a bash to
No.
independents at all or people that choose to be 1099. I just think there needs to be some thought that goes into it. And the financial aspect aside, like you have to be very honest with yourself when you're considering going booth rental. Do you have the self-discipline to be able to run a business? Do you have the courage and the strength that it takes to have very hard conversations with clients? You can't just block somebody because they disagree with your service or whatever. Like you have to be very forthcoming. You have to be able to speak well and handle situations well. You have to get past like just the glitz and glimmer of being on your own. Like if you are an employee and you're not taking initiative now to clean up after yourself, to, help put things away, to be a team player, are you going to do those things when you're on your own? Like there's a lot of that that goes into it too. And if you're not taking the initiative to promote yourself as an employee, are you going to have the initiative to promote yourself when you're solo? And for some people, maybe being on their own puts a fire under their ass that really helps them grow in those ways. But for other people, it is who you are down to your core. And like, not for nothing, some people have it and some people just don't. And that's okay.
And maybe you just haven't found the right place for you to like hang your hat yet. There are a million salons out there.
Not everyone is meant to be an independent. Not everyone is meant to be a leader. Not everyone is meant to be employed. Not everyone is meant to be under someone else. So you have to be really honest with yourself in this industry on where you think it is a good fit for you, and don't let the narrative of, well, everyone else is becoming independent, everyone else is booth renting, that's the way you have to do it in order to be successful in this industry, like,
Or to even make money in
or
this
to even
industry.
make money. You don't need to like pigeonhole yourself into that if it doesn't feel right for you. I know I've had conversations with people in the past that are like, I don't have an interest in booth renting. Like, I don't want to take it home with me. I like leaving it at the door. I like not worrying about having to deal with like the customer side of things. I like that the receptionist handles all my booking. I don't have to deal with it. Like, I go in, I do my job. I don't have to worry about taking care of inventory. And then I leave and I love it. I can't picture myself ever booth renting. That's so refreshing to hear. And then there's also the people that, on the other side of things, like, listen, I could never be employed at this point in my life. Like, I would struggle to be employed because I've been self employed for so long. Um, and I know that about myself. And that is part of the reason that I am self employed. Like,
Honestly, no shade there. Like I think about it all the time.
yeah,
Like I'm kind of, I'm a little stubborn and stuck in my ways at this juncture in my life. And I think about that. Like, could I ever go back to being an employee?
it would have to be a very special situation. Yeah.
I have, like I said, I've interviewed a lot of those people over the past year. And it's just like the trend that I keep seeing is they go and they become independent because that's like the trend, right? Of what they think they need to do. But I have these people that have been in the industry as long as I have. They want to come back to like work for me, but they're charging like my level one haircut price or less for their clients because they never gave themselves a raise. They never increased their prices. They're not seeing as many clients now. And they're like, oh, it's, the economy. And I'm like, oomph is busy. We still see over 300 new clients a month. Like there's just so many pieces and parts and, things that go into it. And I know that oomph is different than a lot of places. And I do see the way that I have inspired a lot of other salon owners to kind of like take charge and offer benefits and stuff like that. So we do see a lot of that in the industry now. But like when you're out shopping for places to work, understand how you get compensated. All right, Joe, let's wrap it up. So for all of the young professionals getting into the industry, again, like my biggest hope for you is that you understand how you're getting compensated. So what are some questions that you could ask an employer to kind of get some clarification?
First would be, is this employment?
Yeah, but not just
And
employment. Is this 1099? Like, how will I be classified?
how will I be classified? How will I be compensated?
Are there additional benefits to my employment here?
Yes, correct. That's a good question to ask too. What is the pay structure? What is the growth structure if you are employee based? If you are booth renter, what is included?
Have a contract.
Have a contract. If you're a booth renter, you should definitely have a contract or
Have
a
it
lease.
have it looked over by a lawyer.
Yeah, for sure. And if you're a salon owner, pull together a lease and have it looked over by a lawyer as well, so that whatever you are providing is going to hold up because you need to protect yourself too as a salon owner. Um, what else? What are some other good questions?
I mean, I think that's just one of those things. It's like just making sure that you understand what you're going to be classified as. Ask for your growth potential, like ask for the benefits because even like again, like we'll get into this in like a totally separate episode, but like ending the commission comparison because commission, like especially as a W2, varies from place to place. And oftentimes we're modeling it after another place, which is not the right thing to do. But, like for instance, like Oomph offers a ton of benefits as well. So, like that kind of like whatever your baseline commission is, if you're getting an IRA with employer match, like I offer, that's like an additional 3% on top of everything else that you're already making, your paid time off, health insurance, what I'm willing to like pay for you. So that kind of like baseline commission is always a little bit more. So understanding what that looks like. Because again, as 1099, you don't get any of those protections. So as a 1099, you have to save up your own money for vacation time. You need to have your own marketing budget. You need to have money put aside for health insurance, all the other stuff. So really understanding what that looks like. What else can you know? Like
I
what else
mean,
should you ask?
I think
What's required of you to work like
yes.
hours?
Yeah, and I think also questions you need to ask yourself are some of those like self-motivational questions like am am I motivated enough to do a lot of this on my own? Am I honest with myself enough to know that I have the work ethic that's going to be required of me to be on my own? Or do I just need to find the right team and the right environment where I can thrive as an employee because I don't want to take on those responsibilities and I'd rather have more of a work-life balance and be able to leave it at the door and come in and do my job and leave.
I would love for anybody considering getting into this industry, like you're getting out of school, you're job shopping, whatever, to have your own questions written down for you to interview the owner. Like
Yeah.
you should not just be the only person getting interviewed. You should interview the owner. Again, ask to job shadow.
Yeah.
Ask to, talk to some of the other like team members, see what that place is run like.
I really, really loved when I would interview someone and I would say, what questions do you have for me? And they actually had questions because to me, whether they took the job or not, it showed me that they were really vested in their future and like really had to know that they were solid in certain aspects for whatever their concerns were. And the people that didn't ask me questions, it was always kind of like just a little heads up in my own mind of like, okay, okay. Not to say some people interview better than others, but being able to ask questions is also very important.
Yep. That's all I really have today. I thought I was going to be a lot more fired up. It's been a long week. It's Tuesday.
I know it's been a long week and it is only Tuesday. But I encourage if anyone has any questions about a situation that they're in and they feel like maybe something we said kind of like tinged upon your situation and you're like, I don't know if where I'm at is legitimate, or I don't know if I'm ready to make the jump to booth rent, shoot either of us a message. Like, we're happy to help answer any questions because it is a really gray, muddy area to navigate. And the more that we know, the more that we can rise up all together.
I will hop on a Zoom call with you. You can make an appointment to sit down with me in my office, at the salon, whatever it is. And I will actually run your numbers with you. So that way you have a comprehensive understanding of what your tax situation looks like. So you are educated and know what choice to make. So, yeah.
All right.
Rate
That's
us 5
it.
stars.
Rate us 100 stars.
100 stars. Share with your friends. I actually got some good feedback also at the job fair that I went to. Another owner that was there pulled me aside and she's like, I just want you to know I've been like listening to your podcast. And I know that episode about sobriety really resounded with me. Like, I really look forward to hearing some of the other ones. And I love that. I love that people are listening and I'm not really knowing about it, but then they're seeing me and they're like, oh, by the way, I'm like, yes.
Yeah, we love to hear the feedback, and we love to hear suggestions on like what other topics that you guys want us to touch upon. We have a list our own, but anything you want to hear, let us know. And that's it.
Until next time.
Peace out, babies.